Impressed anew with that fact, as I saw how wonderfully you had planned for every possible emergency. It was simply great, sir." "Pooh, pooh! Get you home and to bed," said the old chief quite brusquely. He touched a bell, and a man appeared. "Jessop, is the coast clear?" he asked. "Yes, sir," declared the darkey. "Dey've jest had a couple of shots in de park, and now dey took de villains off to de police station. De officers is out dere waiting to 'scort de gen'men." "Get home with you, Gordon, and don't come to the office till 10 in the morning. Then come straight to my private room." Gordon thanked him, and left the room preceded by the gray haired servant. He was surprised to find the policemen outside, and wondered still more that they seemed to be going one in front and the other behind him as he rode along. He was greatly relieved that he had not been called upon to give the whole story. His heart was filled with anxiety now to get back to the girl and tell her everything, and yet he dreaded it more than anything he had ever had to face in all his life. He sat back on the cushions, and covering his face with his hands, tried to think how he should begin; but he could see nothing but her sweet eyes filled with tears, think of nothing but the way she had looked and smiled during the beautiful morning they had spent together in the little town of Milton. Beautiful little Milton! Should he ever see it again? Celia, at her window, grew more and more nervous as an hour and then another half hour slipped slowly away, and still he did not come. Then two mounted policemen rode rapidly down the street, following an automobile, in which sat the man for whom she waited. She had no eyes now for the men who had been lurking across the way, and when she thought to look for them again, she saw them running in the opposite direction as fast as they could go, making wild gestures for a car to stop for them. She stood by the window and saw Gordon get out of the car and disappear into the building below; saw the car wheel and curve away, and the mounted police take up their stand on either corner; heard the clang of the elevator as it started up, and the clash of its door as it stopped at that floor; heard steps coming on toward the door and the key in the latch. Then she turned and looked at him, her two hands clasped before her, and her two eyes yearning, glad and fearful all at once. "Oh, I have been so frightened about you! I am so glad you have come," she said, and caught her voice in a sob as she took one little step toward him. He threw his hat upon the floor, wherever it might land, and went to meet her, a great light glowing in his tired eyes, his arms outstretched to hers. "And did you care?" he asked in a voice of almost awe. "Dear, did you care what became of me?" He had come quite close to her now. "Oh, yes, I cared. I could not help it." There was a real sob in her voice now, though her eyes were shining. His arms went around her hungrily, as if he would draw her to him in spite of everything; yet he kept them so encircling, without touching her, like a benediction that would enwrap the very soul of his beloved. Looking down into her face, he breathed softly, "Oh, my dear, it seems as if I must hold you close and kiss you." She looked up with bated breath, and thought she understood. Then, with a lovely gesture of surrender, she whispered, "I can trust you." Her lashes were drooping now over her eyes. "Not until you know all," he said, and put her gently from him into the great arm chair, with a look of reverence and self abnegation she felt she would never forget. "Then tell me quickly," she said, a swift fear making her weak from head to foot. She laid her hand across her heart, as if to help steady its beating. He wheeled forward the leather couch opposite her chair, and sat down, his head drooping, his eyes down. He dreaded to begin. She waited for the revelation, her eyes upon his bowed head. Finally he lifted his eyes, and saw her look, and a tender light came into his face. "It is a strange story," he said. "I don't know what you will think of me after it's told; but I want you to know that, blundering, stupid, even criminal though you may think me, I would sooner die this minute than cause you one more breath of suffering." Her eyes lit up with a wonderful light, and the ready tears sprang into them. tears that sparkled through the sunshine of a great joy that illumined her whole face. "Please go on," she said softly, and added very gently, "I believe you." But even with those words in his ears, the beginning was not easy. Gordon drew a deep breath and launched forth. "I am not the man you think," he said, and looked at her to see how she would take it. "My name is not George Hayne. My name is Cyril Gordon." As one might launch an arrow at a beloved victim, and long that it may not strike the mark, so he sent his truth home to her understanding, and waited in breathless silence, hoping against hope that this might not turn her against him. "Oh!" she breathed softly, as if some puzzle were solving itself. "Oh!" This time not altogether in surprise, nor as if the fact were displeasing. She looked at him expectantly for further revelation, and he plunged into his story headlong. "I'm a member of the Secret Service, headquarters here in Washington, and day before yesterday I was sent to New York on an important errand. A message of great import, written in a private code, had been stolen from one of our men. I was sent to get it before they could decipher it. The message involved matters of such tremendous significance that I was ordered to go under an assumed name, and on no account to let any one know of my mission. My orders were to get the message, and let nothing hinder me in bringing it with all haste to Washington. I went with the full understanding that I might even be called upon to risk my life." He looked up. The girl sat wide-eyed, with hands clasped together at her throat. He hurried on, not to cause her any needless anxiety. "I won't weary you with details. There were a good many annoying hindrances on the way, which served to make me nervous; but I carried out the programme laid down by my chief, and succeeded in getting possession of the message, and making my escape from the house of the man who had stolen it. As I closed the door behind me, knowing that it could be but a matter of a few seconds at longest before 6 furious men would be on my track, who would stop at nothing to get back what I had taken from them, I saw a carriage standing almost before the house. The driver took me for the man he awaited, and I lost no time in taking advantage of his mistake. I jumped in, telling him to drive as fast as he could. I intended to give him further directions, but he had evidently had them from another quarter, and I thought I could call to him as soon as we were out of the dangerous neighbourhood. To add to my situation, I soon became sure that an automobile and a motor cycle were following me. I recognized one of the men in the car as the man who sat opposite to me at the table a few minutes before. My coachman drove like mad, while I hurried to secure the message, so that if I were caught it would not be found, and to put on a slight disguise, some eyebrows and things the chief had given me. Before I knew where I was, the carriage had stopped before a building. At first I thought it was a prison, and the car and motor cycle came to a halt just behind me. I felt that I was pretty well trapped." The girl gave a low moan, and Gordon, not daring to look up, hurried on with his story. "There isn't much more to tell you that you do not already know. I soon discovered the building was a church, not a prison. What happened afterward was the result of my extreme perturbation of mind, I suppose. I cannot account for my stupidity and subsequent cowardice in any other way. Neither was it possible for me to explain matters satisfactorily at any time during the whole mix-up, on account of the trust which I carried, and which I could on no account reveal even in confidence, or put in jeopardy in the slightest degree. Naturally, at first, my commission, and how to get safely through it all, was the only thing of importance to me. If you keep this in mind, perhaps you will be able to judge me less harshly. My only thought when the carriage came to a halt was how to escape from those two pursuers, and that more or less pervaded my mind during what followed, so that ordinary matters, which at another time would have been at once clear to me, meant nothing at all. You see, the instant that carriage came to a standstill, someone threw open the door, and I heard a voice call, 'Where is the best man?' Then another voice said, 'Here he is.' I took it that they thought I was best man, but would soon discover that I wasn't, when I came into the light. There wasn't any chance to slip away, or I should have done so, and vanished in the dark. but everybody surrounded me, and seemed to think I was all right. The two men who had